So, I'm gonna be real with you. I'm a complete sucker for isekai. So as long as you understand that, you'll understand where I'm coming from. Probably. Hi, I'm Seigyo, and welcome back to another episode of Rule of 3, the show where we take the first 3 episodes of a show at face value and decide whether it's worth a watch to the end or not. Today, we're coming to a show from the author of Fruit of Evolution, and that is not high praise coming from me. So when I was heading into I got a cheat skill in another world and became unrivaled in the real world too, I was prepared for the worst. And, well, spoilers for the first 3 episodes, but if you want to know my conclusion, skip to this time. Alrighty, let me just say this from the get-go. This show absolutely floored me on art style alone. Like, it's absolutely gorgeous to look at. You take a frame from maybe 80% of the show, and it's something I'd be happy to use as like a wallpaper or something. That being said, this show can be a hell of a roller coaster ride in how it holds my interest. Its pacing is wild. From episode 1, we're introduced to our protagonist, Yuya Tenjo. From the start, it's drilled into us not only his personal self-esteem issues, but also how terribly others have treated him over the years, family and peers alike. Like, when I say the kid was bullied, that's a hell of an understatement. Our first scene is our protag standing up for a girl being hit on by a couple of dudes trying to pick her up. She's obviously not into it, but anime bad guy's got a bad guy. Protag gets beat up, but the coppers arrive and scare them off before they can do anything too lasting. Here, we draw the parallels from Fruit of Evolution. That was another show I applied the 3-episode rule to, and the show heavily failed me. Both main characters started off checking all the boxes. Overweight, supposedly ugly, which again, this is by anime standards, what? And everyone judges them solely on their appearance, only for something to happen and they magically become hot and fit, and the world falls into their lap. In terms of Fruit of Evolution, we get this from a magical fruit that makes the main character level up. With cheat isekai, as I'll shorten it to from now on, our protagonist inherits his late grandfather's property, and discovers a secret passage that leads to a house in another world. This world also leaves a lot of things to our young protagonist, who gets frightened by a monster outside his yard and throws the nearest weapon at it, killing it in one shot and leveling up a bunch. Cut to one weird and awkward close-up transformation animation, and he wakes up hot and fit. It's here that our pacing issues start to really crop up. We get some high-octane scenes in the other world, only for our main character to come back and do some humble hot boy things for a while. It can be real jarring at times. And speaking of that, there's one thing this show drills into you, and it's that everyone finds our main character unbelievably sexy, and everyone has to stop and vocalize it. But our boy, he doesn't understand it yet, and honestly, I don't think he ever will, judging by the next 2 episodes. Our post-credits scene of episode 1 leads directly into episode 2, with a girl who Yuya saved, who somehow recognizes him with his sudden transformation, introduces herself as the heir to a super fancy private school, and she invites him over to check out said super fancy private school, much to the ire of his siblings who have bullied him for being inferior his entire life. And I'd say we'd come back to that, but it doesn't really elaborate on this besides to be a set piece for Yuya's trauma. Yuya humble brags himself into the good graces of the principal, who invites him to check out the school and see if it's somewhere he'd be interested in enrolling at. Everyone is nice to him because he's gorgeous, mate, and after almost 20 minutes of showing how much better his life is, we switch back to him training in the other world. This introduces us to a new damsel in distress, who our main character handily saves, and we can confidently say is to join our budding harem. Finally, this brings us to episode 3, which, honestly, is a hell of a victim to the pacing problem. Most of the episode is just more humble brag for the main character on how much better his life is now that he's hot, and capping off with him meeting up with our aforementioned damsel, who reveals that, yes, she wants to join his harem. And that is where we leave off. This is a big part of why I say pacing issues. We have 2 very different plot lines, one being your stereotypical power fantasy, and the other being a guy having his life flipped upside down and suddenly everything's coming up Yuya. I'll be honest, I do see the real human element of not being able to have confidence in yourself after such a sudden change. The way Yuya's feelings are explained doesn't feel unrealistic, but it's definitely driven it hard. These plot lines are very stark in contrast, and most of the time, the transition between the 2 is less than graceful. The soundtrack is nothing remarkable either, and is definitely rather generic to the genre, It's inoffensive, but nothing to write home about. So that being said, I've said a lot of negative and not a lot of positive. So if I were to sum this up, would I be willing to recommend this based on the rule of 3? Honestly, objectively, if you weren't a die-hard isekai fan, it would be a miss. You could definitely get by without spending your well-earned time on this. But that being said, as an isekai fan, I still find myself watching more and more. But if you're a sucker for isekai like me, you're probably already watching this anyway. But thanks for watching. And if you have any ideas for shows for me to do this for, leave them in the comments. I've been Sei, and this has been Rule of 3. Bye!